Robots Radio presents...
Today's chat is brought to you by, well, all of your support. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through Podbean's crowdfunding, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a patron of the FFC, please be sure to visit our website and click on the support link. Even a single dollar helps, and for those of you who are already patrons, thank you again for your generosity.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat. Explore together.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on August 14th, 2020 over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat as we continue our discussion over the lore regarding IO. This particular episode will serve as what we have come to call the advanced session of the week's exploration. Congratulations to those who've signed up for a deeper dive. Before we go any further, however, let's run through a quick introduction of who all we have with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86.
And this is the impressed that you didn't mess it up this time.
That's
Green
because
Eye Music Lover.
I just went with what I have written out there because I just was I'm
it
done.
Still works. It still works.
I'm done.
Still works. It's just fine. It's just fine.
It's
just blue. It's the blue and green show.
It's a turquoise show.
Gosh.
We need purple back so we can have a rainbow. Anyways.
Yes.
Just real quick reminder, by the time you guys hear this one, it will be Friday, so the most recent weekly lore roundup for YouTube will have just come out. Please visit the site, check those out, let us know how we're doing or what we can do better with them, or if there is a particular content creator that you would like us to include on them. That website is thelorenetwork.com. And then also just another reminder, as we kind of were talking about in the intro session, to leave us a review over on iTunes. You don't have to give us a comment. Just a star review helps, but obviously comments are really helpful for us because that helps us get better, not just for our show Focus Fire Chat, but also please be sure to go and give a review for the Destiny Lore Audiophile, which is a new show that Green has started. Since it is still in that honeymoon / grace period on the iTunes logarithm, as many reviews as we can get her started with, that makes it that much better for that system to read. So just a quick reminder for those two things. Green, did you have anything else as far as special announcements?
Just subscribe to Destiny Lore Audiophile on either Podbean or iTunes at the moment, working on Spotify. That one will come out in a couple weeks, most likely, but be sure to hit the subscribe button for that one because it's going to be a weekly release of just lore from the game as within the book. So it's going to be different readers. Sometimes there might be repeat books eventually down the line if I have multiple readers who are like, I have a really good interpretation or I would get this really awesome deal. So you're going to get to see lore presented just as it is. Not a lot of commentary at all. It's just the lore and a lot of good voice actors on this one. So it's been a lot of fun. You'll get to see, I have Infested Potato working with us, if you remember him, as well as a few other content creators out there. So
cool. So recap real quick on what we talked about earlier this week for those listening to the podcast. We pretty much just touched base on all of the overarching things that you can find in IO, whether that be location, vendors, items themselves, emblems, shaders, armor, weapon sets, all that. We also kind of dove into some of the different way of telling the information about that, especially with regards to like the game guide versus the website versus the in-game lore. So yeah, that's where we started off with the intro session. We'll continue that trend. This particular session, we're going to look at story missions predominantly, probably, followed by Planetary Adventures. We're probably going to spend quite a bit of time on Planetary Adventures, especially one particular Planetary Adventure that I know Green is going to talk about. And then we will talk about the two currently world quests that we have. on IO. And then if we can get to it, the strikes and the air quote dungeon that we have as well. But so kind of a full load of stuff there. So we're just going to jump right in. If Green, you think that's a good intro.
Let's do it.
So the first story mission that we encounter on IO is the story mission of Sacrilege. Now, this is the 10th mission in the base campaign, so it's probably been a while since any of us have played this one. Real quick, the Prima Gamer Guide describes the intro as, Ikora Ray has reappeared on this moon, where the secrets of the Traveler are yet to be uncovered. However, the Red Legion forces have certainly mined the area for both materials and information. As you arrive, a Cabal fleet is leaving in a hurry. It is only after a recontour across the strange alien rock outcrops and into a series of caverns that once served the Cabal that the true terror of Io is discovered. The Taken are here. Battle your way out of the interior, following the instruction of Asher Mir as you attempt to close the Taken portal, and you might just survive this. The big boss for this particular mission is the Vortex Mine, which is a Taken Centurion. We kind of touched base when we were talking about Ikora as a NPC figure on IO within the intro session. This is really where her involvement gets explained within the campaign and within the game. IO is set up as basically a holy site for the Warlocks and obviously Ikora, and that is mostly due to the fact of the history that Io has with regards to the Traveler and its terraforming processes during the Golden Age. I'm trying to remember if there was did I miss anything out of Sacrilege?
Ikora also is struggling with her definition of who she is without light, because within this mission. So there's a bit of a psychological disarray that she is in there. She also talks about how the Cabal are harnessing the Traveler's energy or the light. There's the big boom that happens while you're first starting the mission. Energy, the Traveler's energy. What have they done? This is my fault. I could have stopped this. So Ikora just constantly kind of bogging herself down. But this mission had, I would say, 3 primary objectives. Introduce Io as a holy site, introduce the Cabal and what they're doing on Io, and then introduce the Taken and who they are. Because this is actually a really interesting mission where we get either veteran dialogue or noob dialogue. Whether if you're a veteran, it talks about orcs a little bit. If you're a noob, it talks about what the Taken are, which is kind of nice. But those are the 3 main things in this mission. Yeah,
and Dancing Veru is talking in chat. This is also the first time that we hear about the air quote energy of the Traveler as a mineable resource, which brings to the forefront the idea that it is not a spiritual thing as much as we were led to believe prior to this. It's an actual physical, something that can actually be bottled up, it seems, which was an interesting diversion of that particular concept.
Interesting thing, Asher also shows up for the first time here. We get introduced to Asher as it's
not his introduction, in-game? To be fair. It's as a presence within D2. Within in-game. Like, yeah, I know, I remember when he showed up, a lot of us in the lore community, at least, were really excited about him showing up because up until this point, he had only been a figure within the Grimoire. So when we finally got him, like, actually talking, it was like, oh, you're a lot more of an a-hole than we thought, but, you know...
Yeah. You're a lot more annoying. You were better when you were passed out on the bed with Eris next to you. Just saying, no. Asher's not that bad. He's just the grumpy old uncle.
And he has a pretty good reason to be grumpy, as it turns. But that leads... So once you get done with Sacrilege, that leads to the next story mission, which is Fury. Obviously, that is the 11th mission in the base campaign. The big boss in this particular one is the modular Upsilon, and the sub-boss is the modular Sigma, which is introductory... It is the formal introduction on a boss level of just how annoying a goblin can be. God, I hated Sigma. He was... But anyways, the game guide on this one says, it seems that the Taken and Vex are firmly entrenched in battle in the mining facility on Io, a fact you see firsthand as you storm the mining operations structure, attempting to find a war-mined vault. When you realize the only way onward is downward, you need to battle through waves of Taken so you can finally move a giant drill and expose the only way into the vault itself. Then you need to fight your way deeper still into the subterranean vault before finally connecting with the mainframe to uncover vital information regarding the Cabal ship, the Almighty. But it isn't Red Legion forces that could doom this mission. The strongest Taken forces yet seen are ready to seal you in this tomb for good. So in the course of, I guess, the whole thing, you kind of go through Sacrilege, and then technically you have 2 adventures that can occur before you have to do Fury. And those 2 adventures are Unexpected Guest and Road Rage. Road Rage is right after Fury, sorry. Unexpected Guest is the one that is in between these 2 technically. Once you get done with Fury, that unlocks pretty much the rest of the Planetary Adventures that we'll talk about here in a second. But Green, did I miss anything from Fury as a campaign mission?
As far as like the interesting things, you see the division between Asher and his idea of what he thinks of Zavala's plan versus Ikora understanding what Zavala...
Of course, just headbutt it.
Yep. Typical Titan idiocy, I'm sure he thought. Oh, Gauls has a Sun Destroyer. I don't need a plan, I'll simply headbutt it.
Valzu. What was his name for
Vuvuzela. Vuvuzela, yeah. That one I don't think is in this one, but I think it's in one of the adventures when he says that. But
irrelevant.
You get a really good taste. In the first mission in Sacrilege, Asher comes across as just a very brainy guy. And it isn't until you get to Fury that you start to see that he's kind of a snarky jerk face instead. Which he's also smart. But beyond that, at the end of this mission, we get the cutscene between the speaker and Gaul.
Oh yeah, that's right. Is this the one? Is this the one with the burn? Go kill yourself
at the end of it.
Gosh.
No. This is the one where it talks about what it means to be a guardian or the traveler's chosen. Devotion inspires bravery. Right. Bravery inspires sacrifice.
So go, yeah, because then it leads to death, and he's like, yeah.
So kill yourself. Yeah. So feel free to kill yourself.
Feel free to
that one.
I love that cutscene. It's like I'm like, where is this going? Oh wow.
Note, without Asher, we would not have known that the Almighty could, if we destroyed the Almighty, that it would blow up our sun. Yeah. Without Asher. Like, Asher's the one who points that out to us in this mission.
Just a heads up. You guys know that this is connected, right?
Right. The Almighty is inextricably bound to the harmonic resonance of the sun's magnetic flux tubes. What? If Zavala blows up the Almighty, it'll take the sun with it. It's time I rejoined my fire team. Like, Ikora's just like, translation.
Well, and it's not the first time that Ikora starts translating Asher's. Like, I think they were talking about it during the intro session. They were like, Ikora basically calls Asher out during one of the strikes. He's like, Asher, Multiple times. Knows what you're talking about. Stop it.
Yeah.
No,
this one's
fun. Go for it. Sorry.
No, go for it. I was just saying this one's fun. It's one of the more fun missions in my mind.
Yeah, this one is up there with Road Rage as far as my Road Rage is just so much fun because you actually get an interceptor and you can just, they basically give you an interceptor and they're like, have fun. Here's the planet. And it's like, yes.
Let's go blow up this Hydra.
Oh my gosh. I still love when I can glitch into someone who is doing one of the adventures when I'm just on patrol. I'm like, oh, look, an interceptor. Mine now. So much fun. The only other story mission that we have on Io is actually in the Curse of Osiris expansion, and that is the Deep Storage mission. It's the fourth mission in the expansion. This is where we dive into the Pyramidion with the help of Sagira to look for a map of the Infinite Forest in our search for Panoptes. So this was where Sagira bypasses the security of the entire Vex network.
Everybody's like, it's that opening area where you're like, okay, I've got to stand on the plates to open the door because that's what I have to do for every mission and strike. Ready. And then she's just like, yeah, you don't need that with me. Go for it. Just go on in. You're fine. Yeah, Sagira proving that she is much better than our ghost again.
I just was running one of the Mercury Adventures, and Ghost agreed with Sagira. And she's like, oh, is this what it's like when we agree with each other? Weird. I forgot all about that line.
That's in one of the adventures. It's in the adventures.
I started laughing so hard. So bringing up Planetary Adventures, the first one that we get is Unexpected Guests. Really, this is basically our discovery of a new leadership that's guiding the Taken now that Oryx is gone. The big bad here is Iraz, Eye of Savathun. So this was kind of the introduction that Savathun is kind of taking on the mantle of the Taken leader, Taken Queen, I think would be the best way to call that. That then gives us Road Rage, which connects with the Fury mission, because basically within Road Rage, we are tasked with defending the Warmind Vault JYS-2 from the Vex, and then we find in that defense that a Inquisitor Mind, or a Hydra, which goes by the name of Hyadon, the Inquisitor Mind, has stolen some files from the Warmind Vault, so we have to hunt down that Inquisitor Mind and return or recover those stolen files.
Side note real quick on unexpected guest real quick. The Eye of Savathun, which now in game for what we're doing are Shriekers. The original Eye of Savathun, Iraz, is a wizard, or is one of the witch-like characters in that mission. She's a Taken witch or Taken wizard. So not to be confused with the Eyes of Savathun we're dealing with now.
Yeah, I kind of always took, whenever we have bosses, this is just kind of throwback to Destiny 1, whenever we have bosses that are something of like blank of Savathun, blank of Oryx, blank of Quoria, blank of whatever, I always go back to that idea of the Blades of Crota, and like, you know, how you had like the Heart of Crota, the Will of Crota, the Eyes of Crota.
Do you remember the Hand of Crota?
Yeah,
I think was one of them. Wasn't that the Thrall?
Was it the Thrall? Oh my gosh, yes.
There was one.
Yeah, there was.
Whichever one was the Thrall that would end up in the corner and accidentally glitch into doing something that looks totally inappropriate. And you just use your imagination.
Anyway, so
he has a really small hand.
The next Planetary Adventure is Postmodern Prometheus, which, so I just I remember this one because I love how Eris recognizes Eris doesn't blink when it comes to the name Prometheus when you're doing the New Contact event, but Drifter calls out Prometheus as you Guardians have come up with the weirdest names. Love that kind of throwaway line from Drifter when it comes to the name Prometheus. It has nothing to do with this, but it was just something really funny. Within Postmodern Prometheus, we are basically tasked with testing equipment for Asher, which just basically coincidentally involves defending it from a lot of Vex. It also requires you to punch a lot of Vex to get their, I think it was something about their energy. We had to watch how it interacted with something, and you had to punch a Storm Minotaur to death, which was that was a fun one.
Well, you could damage it with something else and then punch it.
I think you had
the final bit.
You had to final blow. Yeah. The next adventure is Cliffhanger. This is where we see Tecton, the constructive mind, because basically what we have to do is we hunt down Vex who are injecting an unknown substance into the moon and put an end to their plans. So basically, we catch the Vex as they are trying to machinoform Io. Asher gets a little upset about this process and designs a virus that we then upload into the Vex network to really mess with them. He's very happy with himself at the end of this mission or this adventure.
Right. Well, okay, you're forgetting a very important aspect of this one. We are hanging out over the valley where the cradle is. We're on top of Vex constructions.
Oh, yeah.
That are phasing into existence as we're in this mission. And once you initiate the virus...
You have a very limited time.
Yes, you have to get off before everything deconstructs.
And you're not within a skip hop away from the cliff. You're
a ways away. It's one of those moments where you're like,
you're like, oh, I have to get out of here. It's the same way. Then we get to do the adventure that I'm gonna just let Green talk on.
Arecibo, the one adventure that I could probably do an entire episode on FFC by myself on.
Why, Green? Why could you do an entire episode on?
I'm going to tell you right after this break.
Have you ever wanted to learn more about geography without sitting through a snoozio lecture? Geography Arcade is a weekly podcast all about your favorite video games and their geographic lessons, inspirations, and even some minor analysis. Some may say analysis. Boo! Well, we're gonna learn and have fun while we talk about Pokemon, Elder Scrolls, and much more. Come join the adventure at Geography Arcade on your favorite podcatcher and YouTube.
All right, I'm a meanie and pushed you to break before I could say anything. So Arecibo is the adventure on IO that has us doing a musical tour and a way of Rasputin and his freaky abilities in some respects. So Arecibo, you follow the music. You follow the music and you find out that this music, then the little nodes that look similar to the nodes that you find on Mars when you are recovering all the different aspects from Mars, that is playing music and causing the Vex to not function correctly. The music does have a few different, very, very important aspects to it because it is based in real life music. One is a pentatonic based song that is actually Asian in reference. I do not remember the original one. And then the other ones are actual Western style music, one referencing Haydn, a little water music or a little night music. And one of them is a march of some sort, and I can't remember which one it is. It's been a long time since we've done that episode on this. But you're following the music through these different things and taking out the Vex as you're going along, and you're worried about why the Vex and why Asher doesn't seem to be answering any of his telephone calls. Still have no answer as to why he is not coming up on comms. Perhaps it's the interference that's happening. By the time you get to the end of the adventure, you've fought through a bunch of different Vex, and Rasputin or whoever is controlling it are basically doing the whole little party trick where you turn on the music and everybody's dancing, and then you turn off the music and then everybody's not happy. Well, when they're not happy, they're shooting at you. But when the music turns on, they just freeze and they're shooting up at the sky and everything. And it's just freeze dance for a little while in the vault. It is the most amazing freeze dance game I have ever seen.
So Wicked in chat. His theory about why Asher's not talking to us is because the interference is causing his Vex arm to choke him out.
Oh, God. Ratchet and Clank meets Destiny. Oh, gosh. If only.
Acceptable.
I mean, it's better than him punching himself in places that would cause him to not want to respond.
Rasputin is a disco ball.
Well, okay, so the most frustrating / scary part is when we find out that Rasputin has the ability to take over our ghost.
Yeah, this is the first time we see that.
Yeah.
We do see that again in Shadowkeep, but yeah, this is the first time that...
Right, with Zavala.
And then there's the creepy rare text or rare dialogue that you get where Ghost fully spazzes out and yells about Mars and ice caps.
Well, that's what happens at the very end. And it's not actually that rare. You can trigger it because once you activate the final thing, you open up a room and there's all these different nodes up on the wall.
Oh, okay.
And the music's much louder. And once you get that, then Ghost freaks out and has his moment of talking about Mars, ice caps, basically the original location of Hellas Basin, where Rasputin is housed within Clovis Bray. But we didn't know that back then because that was back in before Mars was a location again.
Yep.
So Rasputin takes over partially Argos for a hot second, and then Ghost comes out of it and he's like, "What happened, guys? What's going on? What'd I miss?" But that mission is really cool because they use music from a lot of different eras to help tell the story in it, as well as help describe kind of the breadth of what Rasputin, with his culturally diverse things, because that's something we've always known, is that Rasputin was trained or like instructed by Anna, and the way she did that was she was assimilating as much cultural information in as possible. And one of the things that she would put in there was music. And you had a mention earlier in the intro episode about I think it was a shader called Ballet Lover.
Yeah,
an emblem.
Emblem, yeah.
That one's also a reference to the cultural aspects being pulled in.
Dancing says that we need to teach Rasputin boundaries. This is the safe space. You need to.
Well, currently, we've taught Rasputin that his boundary is within an engram. So.
He's in that makes me think of Black Mirror. Anyways, so you remember the
Tale
cookie episode? No, the cookie episode in Black Mirror where they put him in the. But yes, the quotes. So there's a couple like trivia comments here throughout the mission or throughout the adventure. Gosh, man, I'm going to get the word right eventually. Throughout the adventure, there are references to 4 different pieces of literature. The first one is The Tale of Genji, which was written by Murasaki, I think it's Shikabu. This is a show. Murasaki was a Japanese noblewoman and lady-in-waiting from the early 11th century, so quite a while back. And The Tale of Genji, yes, Green?
Tale of Genji is a story about a man who is very good at being a charmer / he was a bit of a rake.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. And it was also not about anything at the same time. Like, it's literally like there's not really a plot in.
It's like a bunch of short stories put together.
Well, and it's actually there's some people who argue that it was the world's first novel. Or the world's first modern novel or first psychological novel. The only other one that comes to mind when people talk about which one came first is another short story called The Golden Ass, which I don't know much about, actually. So I didn't have a chance to look that one up. It sounds like it's really funny, and I just going to giggle to myself about that. The interesting thing about The Tale of Genji is that while it is actually regarded as a masterpiece from the time, giving it a precise classification, and basically because of the influence in both Japanese and Western canonical cultures, is actually really difficult. Like, they can't classify exactly where The Tale of Genji falls. The quote in question is, "Real things in the darkness seem no realer than dreams." So yeah, it's an interesting thing. If you have any interest in that, it's definitely worth going into looking at. The second quote is a quote from Parable of the Sower, which is a much more recent novel. This is a science fiction novel that was written in 1993. Parable of the Sower is the first in a 2-book series. It was actually intended to be a trilogy, but if I remember correctly, the 3rd book never got written. The quote is, "Misdirected by accident or intent, intelligence can foster its own ecstasies of growth and decay." It is actually paraphrasing the full quote of, "Intelligence is ongoing individual adaptability. Adaptations that an intelligent species may make in a single generation, other species make over many generations of selective breeding and selective dying. Yet intelligence is demanding. If it is misdirected by accident or by intent, it can foster its own orgies of breeding and dying. So the story of The Parable of the Sower is, again, it's a science fiction novel. It centers around the figure of a young woman named Lauren Olamina. Basically, she has this capability that is described as hyper empathy. In the book, it's called sharing. And this ability is the ability to feel pain and other sensations that she witnesses. So she takes this capability, and it leads her to kind of come to believe that humankind's destiny is to travel beyond Earth and live on other planets, which that journey would force humankind into its adulthood. And in pursuit of this, she develops a new belief system. It's kind of a slightly dystopian post-apocalyptic world that it takes place in. She develops a new belief system called Earthseed that she is using in preparation for the pursuit of this destiny. So again, that is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, and that was a 1993 one. The third quote is from I'm going to butcher this, and I apologize in advance, the Mahabharata. It is, once war has been undertaken, no peace is made by pretending there is no war. So the Mahabharata is a Sanskrit epic poem. So we jumped from 11th century to 1993. Now we're going to jump all the way back to 4th century BC. This is a poem, an epic poem. And by epic poem, I mean exactly that. Its full form of the tale is about 2 million words long. It is one of the, if not the longest poem in world literature. It was written from the start of the 4th century BC to all the way to roughly the end of the 2nd century AD. It has been a huge thing. It makes the tales of Homer small. Basically, the Mahabharata narrates the struggle between two groups of cousins in the, I believe it is Kurukshetra War, and the fates of the Kaurava and the Pandava princes and their successors. So it's akin to what we usually see in historical epic poems, but on a much, much, much grander scale. And then the last one is a quote from The Master and Margarita, which is a Russian novel that was written sometime between 1928 and 1940. It was not published until 1967 due to the censorship situation in Russia at the time. This was written by Mikhail Bulgakov. The quote is, "Never ask for anything. Never for anything, and especially from those who are stronger than you. They'll make the offer themselves and give everything themselves." The story of The Master and Margarita is primarily about a visit by the devil to the officially atheistic Soviet Union. This novel combines supernatural elements with satirical dark comedy and a very strong Christian philosophy, which basically is one of the strongest cases at that time of defying a singular genre. It is actually because of this that many critics consider it to be one of the best novels of the 20th century, as one of the foremost of Soviet satires, which is also why it took nearly 20 years from the time it was written to the time that it was actually published. And its story of publication is also very interesting. It's very, very political, as you can imagine. But yeah, so those are the four quotes that we have interspersed within this particular adventure. Each one has, I mean, I know Green kind of already made a comment, but like this adventure alone, we could probably tease apart at least 1 or 2 episodes just on this adventure alone.
Mm-hmm. I think we kind of did back in the day.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
remember what episode we recorded it at, but
I remember. Well, it was when it first came out. It was like, what? Like,
yeah, there's a lot in this one, not only from the aspects of Rasputin controlling our ghost, but also the musical history tied into it, as well as all these different quotes. Like that last quote, "Never ask for anything." That kind of gives you Rasputin's personality in a nutshell in a lot of ways. But that kind of leads us to the world quest. And I honestly, of all the world quest, this one was not one I found super memorable.
Dynasty? Yeah, I don't remember this. I mean, I remember this one, but I don't, like, it didn't stand out to me at all, to be fair. So Dynasty is the world quest that I kind of mentioned earlier that is referred to as King's Shadow in the Prima game guide. In the guide, it says that Taken activity has increased on Ganymede with an unusual focus on the Vex. You must find out what they're planning to do and put a stop to it. If I remember correctly in the game, that Ganymede is not even mentioned in the game. So again, kind of the differentiation between information at the time of the guide being written and the time the game actually hit the shelves. But this is basically when we see the Taken. Well, this is when we see the Taken actually starting to convert the Vex, which is up until now we hadn't really experienced. Like, we knew that they did it because obviously there were Taken variants of the Vex, but it was like, but they are actually like the Vex or the Taken are not just taking them, but it's the fact that they're taking them after Oryx is gone, and they're actually harvesting the Vex. Like, they're not just taking them; they're actually like
this is when they're imprisoning them.
Yeah, they're manipulating and almost even experimenting on the Vex, which is what freaks out Ikora, and then Asher. Once Asher gets involved too, they both are kind of like, no, because Asher's big thing is when the Taken start invading the Pyramidion. He's like, whoa, no. That is, I mean, not
considering
okay.
that the Taken from D1 were inside of the Vault of Glass, it would be not a far stretch to see them go into the Pyramidion. But,
but that's why we're tasked with taking down, I think it's Era Rock, which is referred to, and I think you mentioned this, Tongue of Coria, and then Elitiox is the beloved of Coria.
Beloved. Which is interesting, because if you had no experience with the Taken King, you wouldn't know why that's significant. It would just be another boss name. But Curia, back in Books of Sorrow, is the Vex mind that came out of the wound that was cut by Crota when he cut into we assume the Ascendant Plane at that point.
Well, he cut into the Vex's reality from the Ascendant Plane. He was he was in Crota's Ascendant realm, and he made an incision, and the Vex came out, because that's when the Vex were like, whoa, what's this geometry? And they didn't understand anything.
Trying to copy his sisters or try to cut into things like his sisters were at the time.
And I know you know this, but do you remember who tricked him into doing this?
Ah, Zavathun. Oh, good old Witch Queen Zavathun. Yeah, happens later in the cards, but yeah, Zavi is the one who tricked him into cutting the hole for Curia to come through. Which
then led to one of the best punishments you can give to a child. Orcs picked
Throwing him through time?
By his leg. Picked him up and threw him into a Vex gate.
Chuck him. When I was editing all of this for Books of Sorrows for Destiny Lore Audiophile, I just could not help but giggle every time I got through that card entry where it talks about throwing Crota.
Like, what you should have done is put it like in the background, put like a Wilhelm scream, like, ah!
Uh-huh.
This one breaks down.
We're fighting through and working on getting rid of the Taken. Io was the primary location of Taken.
Yes.
In the early day of Destiny 2. Asher's Theory, I don't remember what goes on in that one.
That was when Asher kind of freaked out about them going into the Pyramidion.
And then the long play when we actually corner Era Rock.
Yeah, because this is where Asher is like, he talks about how the Pyramidion is the engine with which the Vex intend to convert Io into machine world. He's talking about how the Pyramidion kind of works a little bit. There's warp gates inside connecting the Pyramidion to 1,000 different places and realities. In your luxurious absence, the Taken entered it in search of said warp gates.
Mm-hmm.
I love how even in his explanation, he insults you. It's like, listen, lazy person.
The thing is, though, with this one, without having prior knowledge of D1, this world mission would be very ordinary. There's not a whole lot going on for you to grasp onto. You don't know why it's so important that Asher's freaking out about the Taken being in the Pyramidion. You wouldn't understand that necessarily unless you had the Books of Sorrow at that point, in which I don't think the anthology was even released at this point when this first came out.
No, I mean, I do know that his hypothesis is that the Taken are seeking to consume the Vex collective mind, which is terrifying in its own way, because I kind of read that as like the whole of the Vex. Like, you know, they're just kind of going, hey, there's the source, let's just take that, and then everything, you know, right there. But yeah, I don't think the anthology was, because this was back
later.
in like 2017, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so then so we basically so we hunt. Well, so we get word of it. We hunt them down, and this is where I think it's excavation site 2 is when we first encounter Ir-Arak, and we kind of damage Ir-Arak. It flees, which is how we then come into contact with Elatiax. We kill Elatiax, and then we continue hunting Ir-Arak, which is basically a calculated action. So we damage Ir-Arak again, and then that's when we go into the long play. And then we corner Ir-Arak in the Pyramidion and completely kill it. So once we have completely killed or completely destroyed the Tongue of Korea, that's when we then get gratitude, which is basically Asher being like, oh, you actually did it and you didn't die. Good job. But yeah, so that was the first world quest. And then I know we just, like, with Season of Arrivals, we have gotten technically the second world quest that is taking place on Io, and I think we'll talk about that after a quick break.
Hey, I'm Tom.
And I'm Stuart.
And we're from the Dungeons & Dragons Lorecast.
We talk about all things connected to D&D lore.
And we're on the Robots Radio Network. So if you're into Dungeons & Dragons or you're into lore, then come check us out. You can find us on any podcatcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get podcasts.
Roll more dice.
That's the Dungeons & Dragons Lorecast.
So, interference is... I can never remember. Is it called interference? I know it's also referred to as means to an end.
Means to an end is the quest that takes you to do the interference mission every week.
Okay. So interference is basically the equivalent of a world quest on Io. It takes place on predominantly either Io or Titan, depending on which section you are in the step, because technically the contact event is either on Io or Titan. But really what interference is a process of acquiring the lore book, the Singular Exeget. Much like when we did, what was it? Dreaming City. Truth to Power.
Those when we were doing the weekly.
Yeah, it was a similar concept to the Singular Exeget. So the means to an end operates from like a mechanical standpoint. There's 3 versions, really. Technically, there might be a 4th that we haven't seen yet. But the 3 versions are the Ritual Encounter, the Relic Encounter, and the Crystal Encounter. And so it rotates through these 3. And each time, so once you get all 3, that's also unlocked a Triumph. But you also have to do it each week to get another entry within the Singular Exeget, which basically translates into, we know that there will be at least 14 individual weeks that we are going to encounter. I think we are currently on week 10. By the time this releases, we'll be on week 12, I believe. So the first big step was a shadow overhead. And this was basically the acquisition process of the seasonal artifact Seed of Silver Wings. Basically, we meet with Zavala following the destruction of the Almighty. Zavala tells us, hey, this is what's going on. Eris is heading to Io to figure out what's going on. I need you to go and help her figure out this stuff. So we go and we find Eris. We go through a single run of the whole process. And then at the end of it, we acquire the Seed of Silver Wings artifact, which then leads us to the next step, which is In the Face of Darkness, which is where we then take that seed and we go and talk to the Drifter, which we find out has been conscripted into helping us, I think is
wrangled.
the best. Big Blue
Convinced.
has made him do stuff. But then that is the completion for that week. Then the next week, when you logged in, you basically were prompted to say, okay, hey, this is means to end week 1. So the means to the end week 1, or maybe was that the protected? I think that was the protected entry. So basically, every week you do this. Like I said, you unlock the next entry within the singular exigent. We had protected, eggshell, white, cusp. Week 7 was a fun one because that was actually a different process. That was when we unlocked the gift entry, but at the end of the mission, we actually had Zavala teleport in or transmat in, which was really fun because there was a fun glitch with that if you were standing to the right of Eris, Zavala's transmatting would actually throw you across the map and kill you, which was hilarious to watch. But Zavala basically shows up and we actually get to watch his conversation with Eris concerning the messages from the darkness that she has been translating and giving back to the Vanguard. This is also the week that we complete the 3rd step on the Ruinous Effigy exotic quests, which was Pendulum. I think that was actually the week that we could theoretically unlock Ruinous Effigy too, if I remember correctly, because I know it was pretty shortly after Zavala's jumping in that we got Ruinous Effigy. The next week, which was week 6, I just went back to the standard, beat the mission, talk to Eris, get the next entry, beat the, blah, blah, blah. So then it was Contrast, yes, Unborn, Purity. This week was Conviction. So next week, if the pattern follows, the next week will be Petulant, then Camouflage, Falling, and then finally Contact.
Yep. I think the lore for these is... The lore is interesting, but actually I think the more fun aspect of this mission in particular is the aspect that Nokris has been essentially conscripted by Zavathun. Like, they're working together at this point, and Nokris is always the voice actor used within the mission of interference every week. And he's basically taunting us most weeks in one way, shape, or form.
Man. The line about ghosts being a worm.
Yeah. Which I think we've mentioned on the show at some point. There's
a lot of parallels being drawn. I love the acknowledgement from one in-game character of being like, you can't throw shade on us because you have the same mechanic on your side, just because you are the quote unquote good guys. I love that Nokris is calling that out, or whoever is taking on the guise of Nokris, if you want to go down that rabbit hole.
Right.
But yeah, so hopefully in one of these final weeks, there is technically slight spoilers. There is technically supposed to be a variant of the process for one of the triumphs to get the Forerunner title. So I'm thinking that we might see that with the final week 14. If I was a betting person, that's when I would expect that to kind of hit.
So here's my questions, though. Now that we have the Tree of Silver Wings, essentially, or the tree, whatever we're going to call it at this point, on Io, and the missions tied to it specifically, and the seed, which is the deliverer of these messages, like Eris's descriptions, which is what is singular exigent, are coming from the seed itself. It's her notebook, essentially, her journal of her work at the tree. And the seed is giving us these pictoglyphs. Pictoglyphs?
Now, do we want to talk about that a little bit? Because that
we should.
Involves the web lore, too.
Yeah, I think we should a little bit.
Because the explanation of that whole process, so from a lore perspective, an in-game explanation perspective of that weekly cycle, because it's like the first quest or the first step is we have to go and we have to basically gather, I think it's like gather the darkness from the contact event. We have to gather energy from that contact event. You have to run through the event or whatever. The whole reason why we have to do this every week is because behind the scenes, Nokris is actually trying to mess up stuff. So there's a web lore entry which Nokris basically abandons Zol and pledges loyalty to Savathun, which is also a really interesting thing because the trick that Savathun plays on him at the end with the thrall is just really interesting. But basically he says, he basically agrees to help her by disrupting whatever communications are coming from the seed. So when we get the seed, those disruptions that you see mention of, that's actually Nokris and Savathun kind of jury-rigging stuff behind the scenes. That's why we have to reset it every week. So when we have to do the contact event, and then it seems like it's on a rotating schedule, or go for it.
Yeah, there's generally a different secondary
umbral
step within it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're essentially attuning it to be able to go in. And it's on a rotating schedule. It not necessarily is by week, it's by how many times you've done it. Because I know that Dwyer is a few weeks behind me, and he will be on a totally different step for the umbral step than I will. So sometimes we'll have to spend, because a lot of them are like menagerie based, right? Or
the ones that I've had
Gambit.
are Gambit or Elimination are the two that stand out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or Strikes. Strikes I think is the other one.
Yeah. He's on a different step than we are, which is, I think, tied to what card he's ending up getting.
That would make sense. Yeah, because it would be the week, because each week is a different ritual that you're dispersing as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think if I'm remembering all this off the top of my head, the umbral. So it's like your gosh man, this is gonna date me so badly. So back in the day when we didn't have cable, we had these things called rabbit ears on the TV. And for anyone who doesn't know what rabbit ears are, I am sorry that you didn't get to live through the pain in the butt that this was. But it was basically like a very small version of a satellite. You could also have satellite dishes, but that was a bigger investment. So anyways, a rabbit ears, it basically had like a ring and then like two antennas going out. And in order to get a TV channel, you would sometimes have to move the I don't know what you want to call them, the antennae to different locations based on how the signal was coming in that day. And the fun thing about rabbit ears is if you touch them, that changes the reception. So like you were constantly having to fidget with rabbit ears to get the best reception for your various TV channels. That's basically what we're doing with the seed, is every week we have to fine tune the antenna on it so that we can cut through the white noise that Nokris is generating so that we can actually receive the transmission from the pyramid. So when you talk about like the contact event is basically reconnecting it, but then the umbrals are refining it. So you're replugging it in and then also moving those antenna back and forth through the umbral pieces to get that best connection. And then you also then have to go and jump through the interference mission. Is that what it's referred to as? And then that's when you completely sever the ritual, whichever ritual you're on, you completely sever the ritual through the defeating of the witness. Is the witness? Yeah, I think I can't remember what the technical term for it is.
It's the shrieker that's there.
Yeah, but isn't it like? Hang on, I know there's actually.
I don't remember. There's eyes of Savathun that are shriekers. There's also witnesses of Savathun that are shriekers.
Savathun's witness. Yeah, that's what it is. There's envoys also that show up, and those are really annoying. But yeah, Savathun's witness is the giant shrieker that you're basically chasing through this whole thing. But once you defeat the witness, that completely basically breaks the interference, and then you can return to Eris at the Tree of Silver Wings, where she then will tell you, that week's particular message.
Also, I do like how they allow you to continually proc prior week's messages.
Yes,
with Eris.
I do appreciate that. That's why when we first loaded in, I remember reading everyone was freaking out because it was like, you have, 600 seconds until the mission. And like normally it's like you have like 20, but it was like some astronomical number, and everyone's like, oh, there's hidden something in this tree. It's like, oh, no, it's because literally so basically at the end of this whole thing, you should be able to say, I want to keep hearing Eris read the entire mission back, and you should be able to see every single one of them back to back, which I think it's got to be really cool to hear those little excerpts back to back.
Fun fact, though, if you haven't caught up to the week where Zavala shows up,
just stand to the right of Eris.
Just stand where you intuitively would go to watch Eris talk to the seed or talk about the seed.
It is the
and
best.
Then immediately get T-posed and thrown into the side of the tree. I watched Issacol do this. It was hilarious. She actually captured it. Oh, God.
Yeah, there is a couple people who captured it, because I remember when it first happened, everyone's like, what?
Big jerk. I was standing there. You know whose fault that actually is? It's not Zavala's fault. It's his ghost.
Oh,
his ghost is the one who transmitted him.
But that actually brings us talking about strikes.
The Pyramidion is the strike that we deal with on Io. It is the one where you fight Brachion, the Jerkion, who, if you do too much damage at first, but not enough,
we did
you'll
that
pop
once.
his head off. Oh my gosh, Dwyer, it is his mission in life, every time we go into that strike, to pop Brachion's head, which renders him invincible and shooting his sniper rifle and chasing you around the map until you complete the cycles. It is the most infuriating thing to do in Nightfalls, and he's a jerk. But
as far as infuriating, what she means is absolutely terrifying.
Oh my God. You are screaming and trying to hide. Like, I'm just going invisible as fast as I can when that happens and running around like a chicken with my head cut off. But the Pyramidion strike, that happens where you're going in and you're trying to find Brachion. You get a lot of dialogue from Asher and Ikora referencing Asher's time within the Pyramidion, including the infamous there is no lake thing, like the moment where Ghost is like, should we tell him there's no lake?
Is it a metaphor? It's not a metaphor.
Not a metaphor. Yeah. That one, it's a giant taken hobgoblin in there, and he's a jerk face. Otherwise, I think that strike is fairly straightforward and fairly simple to work through.
Watch out for the lasers.
Yeah, it is the SRL.
It is. That tunnel, you'll know what tunnel I'm talking about if you've ever run the strike. That tunnel is probably next to Brachion, the place where most people die.
Yep.
The only other strike really is the Festering Core, which was introduced following Forsaken, right? Because it was after
Shadowkeep.
Dreaming City. Was it?
Shadowkeep.
Was it really Shadowkeep?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where we have Zavala and Eris as the strike leaders, air quote, the strike vendors, I guess would be the best word for it. But this is where we see Savathun kind of stretching out and trying to more directly touch things, supposedly.
There's a lot more taken blights.
Yes.
And a taken centurion at the end.
And then I think is it Ghost that recognizes that the Taken Blights are the same signature as the ones from Dreaming City?
Correct.
Yeah.
Ghost calls it out about halfway through. The weird thing about dealing with this one is that you're not only interacting with Taken, but you're interacting with Vex constructs and locks. So there are locks to get into there's plates that you have to stand on to activate the locks that you shoot to deactivate the gates to move into the next area. Those are Vex oriented. But then you're also dealing with all the Taken that are showing up and trying to take you out, including quantum mines, I believe that's what they're
those
called.
Things so much. The Hydras.
Yeah.
The
So
Hydras
there are
that
Hydra
encase
that
you.
send out a shield to encapsulate you as you're moving through things. And if you don't either get out of their zone in time or don't shoot them and stun them, they're going to...
I see one pop up and I'm like, nope, that's a rocket to the face. Like,
Yeah.
you are getting my full focus until you blow up.
Mm-hmm. At the end, you have to actually kill that in order to unlock to do damage to the
Right.
boss. That is the win scenario that you have to do over and over again.
Yeah, and then the other thing with the other one, because that's also the one that has Walls of Death from, is it the Menagerie that we saw that in too? I think it was.
Yes.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, Menagerie had something similar, but it wasn't the same exact one. But yeah, it's a similar mechanic.
And then finally the dungeon, air quotes on dungeon, of the Whisper, which basically is you get the Whisper of the Worm.
Which is actually a really fun thing to run through.
If you have a good map.
If you have somebody in the same fire team with you.
Unless you want to break Twitter. Then you can do it the way we did it.
So Blue plays primarily on Xbox. I play primarily on PS4. Blue was trying to find the Zabathun eyes, and I was trying to guide him via voice.
For the most part, we managed it. But
all except for the last one.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny. But basically, the long story short, Green had to post the video, which then all the people on Twitter were like, Green, what are you doing? It was like we were doing coded messages. Everyone was trying to figure out what we were talking about.
Green's trying to help Blue out. She just looks stupid in the process. It's fine.
Gosh. Oh, it was so fun. Watching the fallout from that was just hilarious.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I mean that's really, there's quite a bit on IO because IO's been in game.
Technically one more mission too. When you get Izanagi's burden, you have to do a mission on IO. But it's just it's a rehash of another one, so
is that the
it's
one
only worth calling out?
Because I know with Izanagi's you also have to run through the Pyramidion to get the Radiant Phase Glass. Mm-hmm. Is that what it is? Okay.
That's what it is. But that's the only other tie-in to it.
Yeah, because that was the Radiant variant of the Phase Glass that we talked about in the intro session.
Correct.
But
correct. Yeah, which I still need to do. That's 11 pages of IO lore. We did it.
Shout out to Green for patience.
Shout out to Blue for writing a dissertation on IO.
I need to finish doing the same thing for Mars.
No, I started it already.
Yeah, Mars is going to be like I said. IO. The thing that I love about doing like World War stuff is that like it's the breadth is just. It's so much. Like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes with games or within the game world for the actual planets that we actually, we are interacting with that are it's so much deeper. Like any one of these particular things we could probably break out and reasonably do at least a single episode on. Maybe not 2 episodes, but we could definitely do at least 1 episode on them. And, kind of just touching base. And it's like, it's again, just kind of pulling back the curtain and seeing, hey, look, this is, we today, we load into IO and we're like, all right, do the 2 things and move on. But there's so much that goes on that explains, why these things happen, what is happening, what is going on, what has led to these things happening. I mean, IO has been in the game for ever since it launched for Destiny 2.
Yep.
So there is a large number of trivia facts of minor stories that will sadly be missed when it does get sunset.
There's a point on Io where there's a tree planted specifically for Ulantan where he used to meditate.
Yep. I mean, there's like the endless gates, there's like these different nooks and crannies within all the worlds, like not just IO. Mars has them, Nessus has them, EDZ has a ton of them. Thankfully we don't have to do EDZ World Lore because that would be like 3 weeks worth of information because obviously the Earth is so much more known to us. Like it's one thing for us to kind of talk about IO, Mars, Nessus, all these they're real places, but we don't actually have like experiences with them. Whereas like EDZ is like, that's the European Dead Zone that, it is based in something that we could encounter in real life. And so there's a lot more nuanced history with the EDZ than just like IO, because IO is, it's not really something that we interact with. But yeah, I mean, it's for like shoutouts, seriously though, shoutouts goes to not just, the narrative team current and previous, who have made IO and made the other worlds what they are, but also, the sandbox team, the visual teams who take those stories and they make them the beautiful things that we can interact with and we are engaged with, like that actually draw us back into it. I think that this is definitely an example of that convergence of storytelling, of aesthetics, of mechanics, of all of the components within building a game coming together in a really beautiful way. But yeah, Green, what about you?
I think my favorite imagery that came from IO actually came when we got the cutscene of the Vex birth cutscene. I think was back in, was it Season of the Undying when we got that?
Yes.
It was within this last year. That cutscene, it takes the Pyramidion, which is something so familiar. And I don't know about you guys, but I have a really bad habit of just shoot the things, run through the gate. And I didn't really look at what I was dealing with, but I've gone back through, especially the Brachion strike, the, what is it, the Undying Mind, or not the Undying Mind, whatever that strike is called that we just talked about.
The Pyramidion?
Pyramidion, yeah, that one. When you're going back through it, if you turn around after you go through one of the gates, you'll see the prior gates where you came from above you, and you're basically jumping through points within the Pyramidion, and you can kind of see some of the same designs that came out in that video itself. You'll see that same area where the Vex were flying through and getting the Vex inhabitant in within the shell. It's very interesting, and there's some really cool things just kind of tucked behind things that we've been doing this whole time that if you hadn't been looking, you would have never known. So that's my shout outs. That's my call out to just the world design and the mission design in general, because there's some really cool missions in all of these places, especially the Arecibo mission. I don't know who wrote that mission or who decided that that was going to be the concept, or even Road Rage. Road Rage is another one of my favorites because that's just fun. Mm-hmm. Those are my shout outs, and I think we should wrap.
All right. Well, as always, thank you for your time. And until next time, remember, with wisdom we conquer, stand strong, stand tall, and keep exploring. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusedFireChat. Links to all our episode archives can be found at www.thelorenetwork.com. Please be sure to email us at focusedfirechat@gmail.com with any comments and or questions for the team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. So until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.